Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today I'll be showing you how to make a chocolate raspberry cake. I feel like I say this every time I share a new cake recipe, but right now this is my current favorite cake. It's just a super moist and fudgy chocolate cake filled with raspberry, and we're also infusing raspberry through the frosting. I think you're going to love it. I really do. So let's go ahead and get started by preheating our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll need a large mixing bowl for this recipe, and in this we're going to combine 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour with 1 cup each of granulated sugar and light brown sugar. And make sure you are firmly packing your brown sugar. Now, to give this cake its nice chocolate flavor, we're going to be using cocoa powder. You'll need 3/4 cup, but we're not using just any cocoa powder. I really recommend you use dark cocoa powder for this recipe, which is just going to give the cake a really nice, really chocolatey flavor. Next, you'll need 1 1/2 teaspoons of baking soda. And for our salt, we'll just need 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and this is table salt. Now you'll want to whisk all of your ingredients together until everything is nicely combined. If you see any clumps in your brown sugar, just use your whisk to break those up. All right, now to make the cake nice and moist, we're going to be adding 2/3 cup of a neutral cooking oil. And by that, I mean you could use canola oil or vegetable oil. I personally prefer to use avocado oil, which is what I'm using today. So we'll add this, and cooking oil really does make the cake nice and moist, especially if you need to refrigerate your cake. The oil will help keep the crumb really soft because the fridge can dry out a cake. Oil is just going to help counteract that a bit. Now, we are not going to skip the butter entirely. We're still going to be adding a 1/2 cup of unsalted butter, and you do want to melt this before you add it into your batter. Now, one nice thing about today's recipe is you don't need to use a mixer. You could stir everything together by hand, but this mixture is going to be a little bit hard to combine, so I'm going to use my electric hand mixer. Alternatively, you could use your stand mixer instead. So once you're done mixing these ingredients, you may notice that the batter is not going to be really liquidy. It's going to be pretty dry and crumbly, but you want to make sure that all of your dry ingredients have absorbed that butter and oil. So everything should be moistened before you proceed. I'm going to slide this out of the way just a bit. Next thing we're going to be adding is 2 large eggs, and ideally these should be room temperature. Ideally all of your ingredients should be pretty close to room temperature because that is what's going to help them combine into the batter evenly and give you a nice uniform batter. So we've got 2 eggs, large eggs. We're going to add these into our batter along with some vanilla extract for flavor. You'll need 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. We'll stir everything together again until those eggs are well incorporated into the batter. Eggs and vanilla. So at this point, your batter is starting to look a little bit more like a batter, but it's going to still be a little bit on the drier side. We're going to remedy that by adding some buttermilk. You'll need a cup of buttermilk for this recipe, and I just like to gradually stir it into the batter. Now, buttermilk is really the best choice for this recipe. If you can't find buttermilk, I do have a substitute. All you need is whole milk and a little bit of an acid, so you could use either lemon juice or white vinegar, and you can make a substitute. Honestly, I don't love it as much as I love the real thing, but if you are just in a spot where you can't find buttermilk, it'll work just fine. So now we should have a pretty nice, velvety batter. We're not done yet, but I do want to pause here because I want to scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl because we don't want any thicker batter hiding on the bottom. That's just what tends to happen. All right, the next thing we're going to add is a 1/2 cup of hot coffee. Ideally, this should be steaming hot. Now, I like to use coffee because it's going to help enhance the chocolate flavor, make it even more rich and chocolatey tasting. But if you don't have coffee on hand, you could use hot water instead. I feel like I sound like a broken record because I say this in all my chocolate cakes, but the most important thing is that you're using a hot liquid because that's going to help bloom the cocoa and bring out the chocolate flavor. So we'll go ahead and we'll slowly stir this in. I don't want to splash myself. And we'll just keep stirring until we have a nice uniform batter. And we will want to stop to scrape the sides and bottom of the bowl just because that's going to help ensure our batter is nice and uniform and our cakes bake evenly. All right, now to bake your cakes. We're going to be making a 3-layer cake. I'm using 8-inch pans, that's what I recommend. And in order to properly prep them, you're going to want to grease and flour the sides. It's a good idea to grease and flour the bottom as well. I use butter to grease the pan, and then you want to flour and tap out the excess flour. Now for extra insurance, to guarantee your cakes don't stick, cut out a round of parchment paper, put it in the bottom of the pan. That's going to be your insurance, and your cakes will never stick to the bottom of the pan this way. I'm just gonna go ahead and divide this batter evenly. So hard not to snack on this cake batter right now. All right, now we'll take these over to the center rack of our 350-degree Fahrenheit preheated oven. They're going to need to bake for 24 to 25 minutes. A good way to tell that they're done is to use the toothpick test. Insert a toothpick in the center. It should come out clean or with a few moist, fudgy crumbs. Now we'll just let these sit in their pans to cool for about 10 to 15 minutes, then run a knife along the edge and carefully invert them onto cooling racks to cool completely before you decorate them. So while the cakes are cooling, or even while they're baking, we can start preparing our raspberry filling. This is going to take some time to cool, so you could prepare it in advance, even the day before you make the cakes if you prefer. So we're going to head over to the stovetop for this step, and you're just going to need a small or medium-sized saucepan. First thing we're going to do is whisk together a half cup of granulated sugar with 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, all of that in there. Next, we'll add our raspberries. You're going to need 3 cups of either fresh or frozen raspberries will work well for this recipe. We're also going to add 3 tablespoons of water and 1.5 tablespoons of lemon juice. Now we'll stir everything together and then turn our stovetop heat to medium. Stir this constantly until the berries have released their juices. Should be pretty obvious. You'll have a really rich red color, really juicy mixture here. The mixture should also be starting to bubble. This is where it's going to thicken a bit. Just make sure you keep stirring. That way it doesn't burn. Don't be afraid to mash up the berries as you go. They'll start to break down on their own, but it doesn't hurt to give them some encouragement. So this will take some time and some patience. It's not unusual for it to take 10 minutes or possibly even longer. So you just need to have a little bit of patience, but I don't recommend turning up your heat to speed up the process. You're going to end up just burning your mixture, and it's important that the sugar dissolves slowly and things go slowly here. That way you get the texture and consistency that we're aiming for. So the mixture is going to thicken some. It's only going to appear slightly thicker. What I like to look for is when I pull my whisk through, you can see the bottom of the pan. You may notice that on the side, some of the raspberry looks like it's trying to start to cook to the bottom, which of course we're stirring to prevent that. But if your spatula or whisk will leave a trail behind it, that's a good sign we're ready to remove it from the heat. This actually happened pretty quickly for me today. To say I only had to cook it for about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit less. If you're using frozen raspberries, it does tend to take longer. So I'm going to go ahead and transfer this right into a heat-proof bowl. Now this will need to cool completely before you can use it, so make sure this is cooled completely and your cake layers are cooled completely as well before you start trying to do any kind of assembly. Once everything's cooled down, we can start making our frosting. Now we're making what is primarily a chocolate buttercream frosting with a hint of raspberry. I didn't want to overwhelm the cake with raspberry, and I think this helps us pull off the perfect balance of the chocolate and raspberry flavors. So we're going to start, as most buttercreams do, with 1 cup of softened unsalted butter. Just drop this in a large mixing bowl. And I'm just going to use my electric mixer to just beat this together until it's smooth and creamy. So next we're going to start to gradually add our powdered sugar. You'll need 3 cups of powdered sugar for this recipe. Don't add all of your powdered sugar all at once. It'll end up all over your kitchen, all over you, and it's going to make it really, really hard to incorporate it with your butter. You'll end up with it all over you anyway. It could be worse. It could be a lot worse. Now for the chocolate, I do prefer to use natural cocoa powder rather than dark cocoa powder for the frosting. I just really like the way it works with the raspberry and the cake better. Again, we're aiming for a nice balance of chocolate and raspberry flavor, and I didn't want to overwhelm the cake with too much of a bitter dark chocolate flavor. So this is 2/3 cup of natural. All right, now for flavor, we're going to add a heaping 1/8 teaspoon of salt. And you may notice I'm not adding vanilla extract. Vanilla extract definitely has its place in a lot of recipes, but here it can end up bullying the raspberry flavor, and what we want is that fresh raspberry flavor to come through, so we're not adding it to our frosting. All right, now here we're going to start adding some of our raspberry filling. Again, it's very important that it's cooled. You're going to want to measure out 1/3 cup of the filling for the frosting. The rest of it's going into the cake. Now what we don't want to do is add all of this at one time. That could actually encourage your frosting to break or curdle. So I'm going to stir this in just a tablespoon at a time. About a tablespoon. And then the final thing that I add, just to help lighten up the frosting some, give it a nice texture, make it easy to spread on the cake, is 2 tablespoons of heavy cream. And we'll stir this in. I'll turn up my speed to sort of whip it a little bit. All right, let's take a look. All right, time to frost some cakes. Now, if your cake layers need to be leveled, you can go ahead and do that. These cakes do bake pretty nice and flat, and I'm only going to be serving this to my family. It doesn't need to win any awards, so I'm not going to be leveling mine today. What I am going to do is I'm going to put my frosting in a bag fitted with a large round open tip. This is just going to help me when I'm piping the dam, which I'm going to do in just a second. First though, I'm going to pipe a little bit of frosting on the cake. Spread that very thin layer over the cake. It's just going to be sort of a barrier between that raspberry layer and the cake. And then I'll use my piping bag to pipe a dam around the outside of the cake, which will hold in the raspberry layer. Now we will portion half of this into that dam. We'll take another layer of our cake. Almost forgot my chocolate layer. It's okay, we can add it now. We'll add the rest of our raspberry filling, which smells so good. I'm not leaving any of that behind. And our final layer, we'll go ahead and decorate the cake with the rest of our frosting. All right, and then the final thing that I like to do on this cake is I like to do a ganache drip, which is totally optional, but it does add an extra touch, an extra chocolate punch to the cake. I do recommend chilling your cake in the fridge or preferably the freezer for like 10-15 minutes before adding the drip if you're going to do so. I have previously shared a detailed tutorial on exactly how I make this chocolate ganache for the drip and how I do the drip. So I will either leave a link in the video or leave a link in the description so that you can easily find that if you've ever struggled with a drip. In the past, my ganache drips did not look good. So if you need help like I do, that video should be very helpful for you. You will want to let the ganache set a bit before you cut in. That'll take like 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer in the fridge. And if you'd like, you can of course decorate it with some additional berries on top. Those are just going to make it a little more difficult for me to cut into the cake, but I did want you to see how it looks with them on top. So now that we put them on, we're going to remove them. And let's cut into this one. And just a note, chilling the cake again for 10, 15, 20 minutes before cutting into it will help give you cleaner slices. And that is how you make this absolutely incredible chocolate raspberry cake. If you try it, let me know what you think. I really do always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. My favorite part of the day. I love this so much, and you are going to too. Oh my gosh. All right, you can see the cake? Oh yeah, of course you can. Oops, look at that. Except you mean people, you can stay away. Until you notice that the berries have released, like the nice commenters. What is wrong with me? This is the second time.